Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, everybody. In this episode of Houselights, we launch a new series that we're calling Wing of Sherlock, where we examine the great detective through the distinct visions of different directors. Tonight, we tackle two adaptations, that's right, two of The Hound of Baskervilles, separated by 2 decades of wildly different sensibilities. The 1939 version introduces Basil Rathbone in his defining role, all Gothic atmosphere and studio-bound fog, while the 1959 Hammer film production drags the story into Technicolor with Peter Cushing at the helm and a hound that looks like it wandered in from a different movie entirely. With me, playing Watson to my Holmes, eager to follow every lead across the moor with a notebook and a ridiculous accent, but maximum enthusiasm, Darren Moser. And lurking in the shadows like Stapleton with a butterfly net, ready to poke holes in every theory and remind us that nothing is as it seems, John Mills. From the way each film handles Watson to their competing ideas about what makes the moor menacing, we dissect what works, what falters, and why the same story can feel so different in the hands of directors working in opposite eras of studio filmmaking. Let's light our pipes, avoid the bog, and hope that Hound is just a very large dog. This is Houselights.
Bravo, good chap. Good show.
Very good. Very good. Elementary.
I freaking lost it when the 39 Watson, he said that. He said it just like that. He said, I wasn't even parroting him. That's what he sounded like. And I was like, so that's why we jokingly say murder? It came from that.
Well, yes, there are plenty of things about the 1939 Hound of the Baskervilles that I found to be charming artifacts of the time, I guess you could say. It's really, I mean, you hit on it in your intro. It's the same source material approached in two decidedly different ways, although they're both studio movies, quote unquote. And it's like, it's really wild to see, I think, what stays the same and what differs between the two of them. Like, what are the defining things that I can look at it and be like, at a glance, I could have the sound off and I'd look at it and I'd be like, that's a Sherlock Holmes movie. I mean, costumes are not 1-to-1.
Yeah.
The different sensibilities are not, the different trappings of the era are not 1-to-1, but I could look at either one of these things and say, oh, that's Sherlock Holmes. So what is it that just screams visually Sherlock Holmes between the two?
I mean, in some ways, it's the sum of its parts. It's all these little things. It's the fact that it's, a guy in a deerskin cap, which you kind of have to have at least that, with another guy following him around and, deducing things, that at its core. I mean, heck, Data and Geordi pulled that off, in Star Trek, pulling, a single episode together where you instantly knew who they were, a little over the top, but I'm excited about this wing because not only are we covering this character, but I would say not even since the Wing of King Arthur, when we covered that back in episode 148, where we were actually looking at different representations of the same character. I'm skipping Wing of Predator because that was kind of the same race, like they're not meant to be the same person. So
right,
it's kind of a different comparison. Whereas Arthur is like, it's Arthur. It's meant to be Arthur every time. And yes, dear listeners, as you might have surmised, one of these movies did not have a lot of meat on the bone there to discuss. So
we
wrapped it into 2 episodes.
We all finished the 1939 version, and we all texted each other almost simultaneously, saying, "I don't know if this is enough to fill an entire episode." Speaking of which, the director of 1939 was Sidney Lanfield, and the studio was 20th Century Fox. 59 was Terrence Fisher, and the studio was Hammer Film Productions, but it was distributed by United Artists. And what's insane is that the 39 Rathbone version, he made 14 14 of those. He
Yeah.
made 14 Sherlock Holmes
you said
movies.
defining character. It really is.
So 2 were on 20th Century Fox with larger budgets, and then the other 12 were very much B movies with lower budgets, and they just kind of cranked them out. And Cushing, this was Cushing's only theatrical distributed Sherlock Holmes movie. I think he might have done something for the BBC later in life, but this was the biggest one that he did. And I think one of the biggest differences that I see visually is 39 is all on a soundstage with a bunch of fog machines, and you could at least see some location shooting in the 59 version.
Although I suspect there was some maybe day for night. I don't know, some filters when there was actually sunlight out, just to save
in the 39
on
version or the 59 version?
No, in the 59 version. I'm like, that's a difference between the two of them. Like when she ran out at nighttime in the 1959 version, I was like, maybe you should have stayed in the studio, because that wasn't convincing at all, guys. Like it was crazy. And it's like, I think that in and of itself shows how the studio, like if you keep it in the studio, like it at least creates a visual consistency that I think keeps you rooted in the story to a certain extent. Whereas every time you switch to an outdoor shot on the 1959 version, those differences like jar you for a second. I don't know if it was jarring for the audience at the time, but for me, it was like, oh wow, we suddenly switched, where we were and what we were doing in a very substantial way. When they're running and shows her outdoors running across the moor, as it were.
What's crazy is that we still can't do day for night very well. It's just one of those things that everybody does, but it's never completely convincing. It just doesn't work, because just the sunlight and the shadows that it casts and the sunbeams that go, you just can't change that. You
we
just
can do
can't.
dry for wet better than we can do day for night. Like, that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the differences between the directors for a little bit. That's the main reason why we're talking. Sidney Lanfield was primarily a comedic director. And one of the reasons why, and you'll like this, John, one of the reasons why he was brought on for this picture was because of his efficiency and his pace. He was just like, he was like, this is how we're going to get it done. Like, we're going to shoot it on the studio. We're going to crank it out. We're going to do this many pages a day. Boom, bam, boom. And he worked very much within the Fox system and their style of clean compositions, really, really fast shooting schedules, and doing a lot with a little bit of money on a tight schedule. And then you have Terence Fisher, who is also a house director, but he just got done right before this. He just got done doing The Curse of Frankenstein and Dracula, and so you can really see those influences in the 59 version. Like, the 59 version definitely has much more of a horror tone to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Technicolor also helps as well, because you're able to see the ridiculous blood. It's still wet hours later. But yeah, you definitely have that gothic horror visual language of low angles and dramatic lighting. And I think that was probably the biggest, besides just shooting on a studio versus only sometimes shooting on a studio. I think those were the biggest differences, where it was just like Lanfield was very utilitarian and clean compositions. Fisher had a lot more style to it. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree, because when you watch the 39 version, it's all about the actors hitting their marks. It's much more, it's still in that more stage play mentality. And I think you're right to point out, like, Fisher, even though we can debate whether he achieves anything at this point, or achieves what he's going for, there's a much more grandiose feel for it. And I think that, or he's going for a more grandiose feel. And I think that just the simple way that the story approaches the backstory of the Hound and the ancestor where the curse started, I think is very, very, it displays that. Like, I was very hopeful when the 59 version started, because one of the things that I thought didn't work well at all with a 39 version was that flashback and telling the story of the original Baron or whatever. And I just thought it broke up the movie and it didn't flow well. Whereas I thought it was much more interesting. And again, to your point, Tristan, much more of a horror movie opening to open at night with that dark hall and somebody being thrown out and him going crazy mad because she's escaped the room where he's going to take advantage of her and stuff like that. It's like that was a really ambitious opening. It was like that really set the stakes, like big, go big or go home sort of mentality in 59.
One thing I did like about the 39 flashback, because I do agree with you that the timing was all off, but I did actually appreciate the little visual flair that they had where they superimposed some of the footage onto the page as they were reading and flipping pages and everything like that. I thought, especially for the time, it looked pretty cool because it wasn't too distracting. I felt like they balanced it out a lot. Darren, I'd love to ask you about Rathbone versus Cushing. Now, we don't need to go like, oh, who was better or anything like that.
No.
But I would love to know what you thought of Rathbone's interpretation versus Cushing's interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have like a love as far as like, it's not like Columbo where I've seen dozens of episodes or something else where like I haven't seen all of Rathbone's like 15 Sherlock Holmes interpretations. I just have this one data point, but I think he does a decent job. I would be curious to look at exactly where in the chronology of his performance this is it the middle, the beginning, or the end? I'm not entirely sure as far as portraying Sherlock, but
this was his first.
Oh, this was the instigating. Okay. So in that regard, I can see how he, in the positive, I can see how he captured the role. Like I can see how people were like, oh, I want to see more of this. And this became a series. This obviously did enough money to warrant, 15 more of them, even if they all didn't have the same budget. But I really enjoyed Peter Cushing. And on looking behind the scenes, he really wanted to do right by this role. Did the time, did the research, was maybe not overstepping the director, but was definitely one of those actors who's like, no, Holmes would do it this way, or no, you need this on the, in the background. And it was regarded by many that he just had this knack for doing multiple things at the same time in the same shot, where he's delivering all this prose perfectly while he's smoking a pipe and looking at things and correcting things on the mantle and walking around the room too. And when you actually think about it, I mean, we're so used to that level of acting, but that's not a guarantee that your actor can pull that off. That can't just, like you said, stand and hit a mark. He's using the space and I completely believe he's Holmes. Nothing against Rathbone, but Peter Cushing really sold it for me. Like I felt like he was a perfect fit.
And it's funny that you bring up that was one of your favorite parts of the characterization that Cushing brought to Holmes, because if you look at his most famous role in 1977 with Star Wars, he almost didn't move for the entire movie. He's either sitting down, like he walks in to a conference table, sits down, and then there's another time when he walks a couple of steps pretty slowly towards Leia, and that's the only time we see him move through the entire movie. Everybody comes to him.
Additional side note is for anybody that doesn't know, his boots were the wrong size, and that's why you only see him in his boots in, I think it's like 2 shots total or something like that. Yeah. And he was in slippers the rest of the time. So that's good work if you can get it. But I think that, Darren, I agree with you that what I like about, or what works about the portrayal of Holmes by Cushing is he seems more self-possessed. Like he doesn't have a forced air about him or like an aggressive assurance about himself. He's that relaxed sort of like, yeah, I'm the smartest guy in the room. It's cool. Like he's just like, look, we all know, let's just deal with it. Whereas Rathbone is much more, and I think it's because of his physical stature compared to the other actors, Rathbone can walk into a room and be like, "You will listen to me," and it's like, "Yes, sir. It doesn't matter whether you're smart." I think you could.
Rathbone was 6'2", is that right? Something like that?
He was definitely taller than the other actors. I can tell you that. And that's the thing. That's like sort of the key thing there is I think that there's a difference in the physicality, and I think it's a bias that we all have where when we see a smaller person who's being smart, we almost have this bias toward them because the larger person is just genetically in our brains, in our little lizard brains, to be like, larger person, danger. And so it's eliciting that sort of reaction as well.
Well, and I mean, we speak of Holmes, but really it is the duo of Holmes and Watson. Like a bad Watson or a good Watson can pivot your entire movie. And I also in researching the 59, Cushing Holmes, Andre Morel really pushed to change Watson or go against the kind of established type of the bumbling, Watson. Like his Watson is definitely sharper, definitely smarter. It's not like he's definitely not anywhere near Holmes, but he doesn't need to be, and he's treated as a colleague and a helpful, position.
Yeah, Nigel Bruce from 39 really leaned in to the bumbling fool, where it's just like,
it's like,
he was
why
just
is
the
this guy
epitome of
around?
that noise.
Why does he hold your cocaine? Is that what he does? Is that his job? Like,
well, okay, listen, what does he hold? I have to give a lot of credit to 1939. The last line in the movie is an offhand reference to the fact that Holmes has a heroin habit.
That's right.
Okay, remind me what he said. Like
he says, like, as hair the needle.
He goes, Watson, bring the needle. Yeah, and like the movie ends, and it's like
that's it.
What? I was like, that is mad respect right there that they managed to throw in. They were like, oh, this is never going to get past the Hays Code. We could do it this way. And it's like, don't even give them time to think about it. And it's probably one of those things where people missed it, for years. But like, I was just sitting there watching for it because it's not there in the 59 version. Holmes is much more respectable in his habits. And I found that actually a little interesting because I was expecting it, since it was a Hammer film and they were known for putting out really schlocky horror stuff. I was like, oh, there's got to be some sort of like more direct reference than that. And there wasn't, not that I detected. And it's like, well, I mean, if it was a direct reference and I missed it, then ooh, nuts to me. But like, it was interesting to me because I actually expected 20 years later with a horror studio for them to be more acknowledging of it. But I guess, the stigma's still there and all of those sorts of things. So I just thought it was interesting.
Before we move on to the supporting characters, I want to go back just a little bit back to Holmes. So I read somebody's comment online where it said Rathbone's Holmes is what we think Holmes should be, and Cushing's is what Holmes probably was. How would you rate that? Do you think that's accurate? Do you have qualms with it? What are you guys thinking?
I mean, you're kind of almost looking at the difference between performance and caricature. It makes me think of another famous detective who I'm more qualified to judge just from watching is Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie, because I've seen all of David Suchet's episodes on it, but I've also seen some of the other fictional works. I mean, the characters have been around so long, and when you have, and it's very similar where you have one person who, for some, has kind of represented the character. And I think Rathbone gets that just from, quantity, but that doesn't mean you have someone else who comes in, obviously is really caring about the character, putting their own spin on it. And I think it just comes down to, an audience doesn't know what it's ready for until it gets it. And I think you'd have, I'm sure there were people in 59 who were like, it's not Rathbone doing Holmes. I don't know if I want to see that. Who could fill his shoes? Who could fill his pipe? And instead, I think we got, because they took I don't know if I want to say chance. It probably wasn't that kind of a decision, but with Cushing, you get something new. And I think that that comes down to it. But yeah, to your actual question, I think, although it's going to be an interesting ride as we go through things like Robert Downey Jr., a lot of different actors playing on it. And they're not, dear listeners, we are kind of skipping, we're not going to be looking at Sherlock, with, the British series. We're not
Cumberbatch.
Where they're deconstructing the character. We're not going that deep. Like, we're just looking at the traditional Sherlock.
And also, he's this character, I think, has the Guinness record of most adaptations in the history of fiction.
That
Sherlock
follows.
Holmes.
That follows. The thing is, I don't think I reject sort of the baseline premise behind the question or even the observation, because I think what you're seeing is you're just seeing two different
overruled.
Approaches. Yeah. I think you're just seeing different approaches to acting and the evolution of film acting over time, because Cushing is more natural. He's, naturalistic or whatever. He's much more, film has settled down a bit by 1959. There's a little bit less of a stage play sense about it. And so he's a film actor doing this. Rathbone very much gives, he's giving stage play. And that's right for the era. It meets the expectation of the era. So to sit there and say, oh, well, Cushing is a more believable Holmes, that's like saying, well, yeah, everybody was acting more believably by this point because they had figured out what the camera and the music and the editing could do on their behalf. They weren't still trying to project to the back row, and they didn't have to stage everything to keep it within the 4x3. They had a little more breathing room with staging, and the camera could move a little freer. They had figured out what angles they could light and get and all of those sorts of things. So I kind of reject it offhand. I think they're both equally valid for the time in which they exist.
Well, I want to do another comparison for you. Richard Greene played Henry Baskerville in 1939. He was 21 years old at the time, and he was a contract player for Fox. And then you have Christopher Lee in 1959, who played Sir Henry at 37 years old. Two very different portrayals.
Yeah.
Did one play better for you? Did you think each one was good for the material or for the style of the movie? What did you think about the comparison? Did you like Lee? I feel like we got a little bit more Lee than we did Greene on camera.
I'd say that was fair. I think that Lee definitely plays Greene more as what I would expect a noble to be in the modern era, such as it was then. A little bit haughty. When he doesn't know Holmes at first, and he thinks he's just talking to quote unquote the help. It's like, what the hell is going on with my shoes? What's wrong with you? Sort of thing. Oh, this is Sherlock Holmes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Pardon me. It's nice to talk to you. Like that whole sort of two-faced way of dealing with the world, where it's like, oh, you're of the proper station. That whole class-based nonsense that's baked into that. And whereas I think, I didn't really have a sense of a character in 1939 so much as a presence, and it's like, I don't know if that's the fault of the actor so much as, again, the speed. Like, I think 1939 is very focused on giving Rathbone the stage and saying, okay, everybody just follow him. Basil's going to get us around and you're going to play off of him because he's the star. He's the main character. And it's a very staged sort of vibe to it.
Darren, what did you think about the supporting cast? And even outside of Sir Henry, like, did you think one was stronger than the other? Because there's oftentimes, sometimes the supporting cast doesn't really matter. There's just background and set dressing, and other times it can make or break your film.
It's interesting because this is where, we almost get into, I always want to say it's a different story. Like, I know it's the same story, but it is very different as far as, the lead woman, like, she's she's a bad guy in one and a good guy in the other. Like, that's a bit of a difference between the two. Although I did really enjoy Christopher Lee. It was one of those rare moments nowadays where I did not recognize him for a good chunk of the movie because he is so young looking. I didn't look up the credits or anything like that. I just hit play and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Christopher Lee, like younger than I'll get out. Because I think at this point, the youngest thing I'd seen him in was Man with the Golden Gun, as far as his age. Obviously, much more things recently. But yeah, just I think both supporting casts are appropriate for the tone they're going for. Because the first, 39 is definitely like they look at each other, they get puppy eyes, and they fall in love, and they walk off into the sunset. Like, it's very romanticized. That is not the story of 59.
Oh my God! What was that?
I don't know.
I don't even know how to qualify that.
It's what the kids want to see. You understand, Tristan? That's what people are
He's
paying
a good
the hard
guy. He's
money.
got to get the girl, and she's got to be good.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah. The people pay with their hard-earned money. They want to see the guy get the girl, okay? They got to walk off into the sunset. It's got to be happy.
And also, I don't think my instinct would ever be to chase after a woman to ask her why she's running away from me. I don't understand that
it's
need.
It's the time before cell phones, Tristan. It was a lot harder. Now
Because
Looking
was
for
just
some bars.
Because it happened 2 times in a row. It happened 2 times in a row, like pretty close together, where it's just like, hey, you, why are you running away? Tell me, stop so you can tell me. It was just so weird. Like, I won't kill you. I'm a nice boy. No, it's weird. It's weird.
Again, I think it just gets to that sort of like overblown sort of approach to certain things, and it's, I have to give a little bit of credit to, and I always forget what the ancestor's name is. I apologize. That's just who I am. The original Baskerville that the curse is visited upon first or whatever. And is that Sir Hugo Baskerville? Was that Hugo was the original one?
Probably him. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I really got to give credit to David Oxley, because I thought he was very villainous. I thought that obviously in 39 they're dancing around what he's up to, although we all know, but they're saying it in a very different way, whereas they really they really highlight what an absolute tool he was, not just to the woman, but like he is manhandling and like just absolutely, if anything, you can look at it and say, well, that's actually a real condemnation of what the nobles got away with before the quote unquote modern age. So whereas it's almost like you could see Christopher Lee being the watered down a-hole that's a descendant of that Baskerville, better than you could see the sort of idea of lineage or anything, because the characters are very thin in 39. Those characters, again, are just in service of what does Holmes need to solve. But I want to bounce out the question. Holmes essentially disappears for a substantial portion of the 1939 one. Like, he's a non-entity for a giant chunk of the film. And it's like, did that work? Like the disguise part, I was disappointed didn't carry over to 59, because I wanted to see how Peter Cushing would carry that off. But that's the one moment where I thought that Rathbone actually kind of shined, was being the poor guy in disguise. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, again, not knowing Holmes, like the stories very well, it's like, oh yeah. If you polled America and said, name the actual name of a Sherlock Holmes mystery, most would probably say Hound of the Baskervilles. It's like, as far as actually knowing the name of one, I couldn't name an actual other title. So it's one of those like, oh, well, but it's not actually the best story, like, at all. Like, it's it like you said, it has huge chunks where he's not there. It's very Watson heavy. It reminds me of some Poirot episodes where the secondary characters kind of go off and Poirot's stuck in bed and he's just sending letters. And you're like, I came here to see him. Why am I spending all this time with the Watson character? But yeah, I agree with you, John. I think part of it is, again, not exactly having the best sense of what Rathbone looks like. And it's 39 and it's black and white. So he plays a very convincing tramp of, if you didn't know for a while, like that's who that is, it fools you as the audience member. Now, I don't know if it did in 39. I can't put myself in those shoes, but but they were all very jolly about it, I guess. That's just the 39. Everyone's happy. It's all
Yeah, there was a few moments where you're just kind of like, why is everyone so jovial? People are dying.
Well, they had a more, relaxed view of mortality back then, I guess. They just figured
People
it was going to happen.
It happens.
Yeah, I mean, never mind the lack of urgency to run after the carriage with that's going to shoot. Like in the beginning, it's like,
right.
No, just wait and watch. Look, there's a gun sticking out.
Yeah, they
pointing.
were very slow about. I could have gone another way really easily.
What could possibly the intent of the person in the carriage be? And it's like, that's.
Although I did like, again, I don't live in that era, but there's a little tiny door leading up to the coachman so he can talk to his fare. Makes total sense, but I'm just like, that's so cool. I didn't even know that.
Oh, that's in case the carriage fell over so that you could get out. I imagine
the emergency pole handle for that's a bus. You're thinking of a school bus.
Oh, didn't they use those as school buses back then? Right?
Maybe.
Isn't that what it was? I don't know.
So cinematography wise, getting back on track. So I think the main difference is you have fog and color. And I would love to know, Darren, was there anything that kind of struck you as the main differences? Because like with Marley, Peveril Marley in 39, this guy worked with DeMille, Lubitsch, and, he was kind of known for working in shadows and limited budget, and that's why he was brought on. And you have Jack Asher in 59, who was the go-to cinematographer at Hammer. And it was, I feel like, not only was it color, but you had really great saturation with the colors that you get in 59, like the greens and the earth tones and everything like that. And even though the dog sucked, it was, fully visible. You could at least see it, even if it was to his detriment. And I just loved the horror vocab that was in that movie.
No, I mean, one is in color and one's not. But I will say this to the 39 one. I mean, it's obviously on a stage, but they get every ounce out of that stage. Like, it is really, really well shot. And I think you just expected that. Like, there was no internet guys. There's no blog bros who were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they shot the new Sherlock Holmes on a stage again. Like, no, that was just what you did. You cranked it out. You got it into, we were still recovering from the Great Depression or something. Something was happening. We really wanted our shows.
Terrible. I'm sure something terrible was happening.
Something terrible was right around that time.
I don't know what was going on in 39, if it was a big deal, but
But for the 59, it looked amazing. And I'm just so glad it was an era where we don't care where the lighting source comes from. We're in a tomb. We're underground. We're in a cave. It doesn't matter. You can see everything. It's all beautifully lit, not flat. It's not, like they threw a couple of kinos up on the wall. But I mean, I'm still recovering from like the teens where it was like, nope, there's a candle in this scene. That is the only light source. And it is black and dark as night.
Yes, we hit this all the time. But what I really, watching an old Technicolor movie like this really makes me miss is just the fact that you said it, Darren. It's not flat. we have color now, and it's washed out all the time.
Or color timing.
It's just,
it's like we're going to recolor everything.
Right. Whereas the colors, like you said, Tristan, there's saturation, there's a richness to the picture that, like, even though I'm watching the visual equivalent of a McDonald's Happy Meal, it's still something that I'm like, it's triggering that baseline, oh God, like it feels almost painterly, that it's so vibrant and so hyper real. It's not concerned with being like, this is what it would look like if I was really walking around. No, I'm watching a movie. I know I'm watching a movie. Use the rest of it to fool me. Don't try to cheap out on the eye, stuff and everything like that. It's just, Hammer Films as a whole, they released some real stinkers, but they always had beautiful color. When they were in color, they were always just absolutely gorgeous to look at. You should look at some of the old Christopher Lee as Dracula movies. The saturations in those are insane. And the blood is bright red, but so what? Like I said, I know I'm not really watching a documentary, okay? It's fine. It's fine. Have everything stand out and the colors, pop against each other and everything.
So story-wise, we all texted each other after we watched 39, going, I don't know, guys. I would love to know your guys' opinion, because I'm going to be upfront. I did not like 1939. I thought there was just nothing there. I feel like the characterization of Sherlock is good. I think Rathbone is a great Sherlock. I thought Watson was atrocious. I didn't understand what was going on half the time. I didn't feel like I needed to care. There are people who really like this movie, and that's great. Like there are people who are like, this is my Halloween movie, and it's very atmospheric, but it feels like it got cranked out on a studio. It feels like, okay, the kids need to, we need those kids' nickels to watch on a Saturday night, and this is what we're going to give them. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it felt like. Am I being too harsh?
No.
What do you guys think?
No, not at all.
It's quality mass media. It's a good episode, basically. Of a decent show.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
You mean like TV level quality?
It's like TV level. It's
cinematic.
It's like this feels like something I would watch on an old TV show, where it's like, I'm not going to change the channel. It's engaging enough. I don't really feel like looking around. It's fine. I'm basically saying the same thing you're saying, where it's like, you might have hated it a little more, but I didn't hate it. I was just like, I recognize the limitations of the time and what it was trying to do, and Rathbone does do his thing here. And I think that probably the most damning sort of thing you could say is, I know other things that came out in 1939 that were so substantially better. I don't understand why this does not even approach them. This isn't even trying. This is basically like just, it's, what it is it's basically the Gothic fantasy version of Flash Gordon, where it's like, this is not designed to be art at all. And you can tell it's designed, like you said, Tristan, to get the kids nickels. I'm going to throw, you read Sherlock Holmes. Here, look, it's a movie. We're going to put this up, and we'll pair it up with Gone with the Wind, or I don't know, something like that. I'll let the movie house figure it out.
Yeah, Gone with the Wind's long enough. We'll just tap it on the front. No one will notice.
Yeah. We'll put it in intermission of Gone with the Wind. Give everybody enough time to get through the bathroom.
I mean, I think my point can be summed up by, if you told me, you did tell me, Tristan, that this is the movie that launched 15 movies with Rathbone, like I would have been shocked if you'd said this is the one where, oh man, we got to see more of him and this specific character. Did it make like 8 times its budget? It must have, or done something with the money, or been so easy to make. I don't know, because it is definitely not the. And I'm trying not to look at it with modern sensibilities, but this is not the one that launches the saga at all. But I think Rathbone he's the best part of it. He really is. And maybe that's all that was needed, is we found a guy to play Sherlock Holmes in a way that people want to see. And they brought their nickels. I don't know why I keep talking about nickels, but
we're just thinking about Nickelodeons now for some reason.
But then, versus 59, that was, or one last thing on 39, like John said, if TV had been a thing as much as it was in 50s, 60s, 70s, if it had been like that in the 30s, this would have been this is a made for TV movie before TV became a thing.
Yeah. And it probably played a lot in the 50s.
Right.
And somebody, with kids in the 50s is like, oh yeah, this is safe. And this is fine to watch. Sure. And it's like, you'd have this on a rainy Saturday afternoon. It wouldn't bother you none.
The word binge
is like hanging out.
Hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, I'm going to binge all the Rathbones. What are you, what heroin are you injecting? That doesn't make any sense, son.
So to answer your question, so the 39 was successful enough to launch the Rathbone series like you talked about, and it kind of became the template for Holmes for decades. And Fox initially didn't plan on making this a series. It was programmatic, John, like you alluded to.
Right.
It was programmatic.
System.
They're just like, we got this idea and we're gonna pump this out. But it made enough money. They're just like, okay, let's do another one. And then it moved on. And they're just like, well, let's just keep going. We're gonna keep going as long as we get those kids nickels. We're just gonna keep on making more. And with 59, it performed okay. Like, it performed well for Hammer specifically.
That's an important thing to say.
Yeah,
for Hammer.
Like for Hammer, it was very good, but overall, it kind of got mixed reviews, and so that was that. Like, it was one of those movies that kind of grew with the invention of home media.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see sort of a this will overstate it, but more of a camp appeal for Hound of the Baskervilles 59. Because there's an affection here. And I grew up, I became a horror fan early because of a book dedicated to Hammer films. And I never saw any of the movies, but it was a big book, glossy pages. I wish I still had it. And I would sit there and I was a very young kid, and I would flip the pages, and it had Christopher Lee as Frankenstein, as Dracula, probably 16 other creatures that I couldn't name right now, but you would see this stuff, and it was really something. This is an attempt by the horror movie making machine to do something a little more respectable. It is the way that I take it. And they're like, oh, we can do the good stuff too. Yeah, right? You trust us with this other stuff. We can do this, but it's going to be the Hammer Films version of it. And I got to give them credit for it, because it's more of a horror movie of its time, closer to a horror movie of its time, than it is just that sort of procedural, Holmes is going to show up and figure out the crime sort of thing. There's more of an element of danger and suspense about it than there is with the 39 version. And I freely will admit that I have an emotional leaning toward Hammer Films. Just seeing the, Hammer Films presents in the beginning, I'm instantly disposed toward loving it, like out of the gate. So.
And one last thing I'll say is I feel it's hard to judge the farther back in film history we go. I mean, we will judge, because that's the point of our podcast. But I mean, it was, the landscape of movies was so different in the late 30s. Like, I mean, I have to, you break it down to the basics of, okay, this is what else was there entertainment wise? How much did tickets cost? What kind of part of the economy went to movies? Who brought their kids? Who read Sherlock to them so they knew about it? Like, all these little factors that I can't even picture what the landscape looked like, because it's so far removed from modern day. And there's so many things now of like, oh yeah, I binge watched all of Sherlock, or, oh, I read that for school, or like, again, those weren't things, or they could have been, but we just don't know. So it's so hard to place. All we can really look at is the result of, like you said, Tristan, it was enough to keep it going. And it ticked all the right boxes. It was affordable enough to make. The actors wanted to do it or had to do it. The all the pieces came together. But also to John's point, like, we know some couple little films at 39 that, we're not. They
made
like
a
this.
splash.
Yeah.
They made a splash. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to switch up the formula a little bit just because you just got done talking, Darren. And I'm going to ask you, John, for your final ratings on both of these Baskervilles. Happy
to help you out. As much credit as I have to give the 1939 one for referencing heroin use in its last line, I was actually very underwhelmed by it. I went in with expectations that were too high. And I thought it was exactly everything that we've been saying it is. So I gave it 2 stars. I go back and forth. I think I might have been a little too generous because I don't think I'll ever watch this again. But I might just be inclined to be generous because I know what it caused. So, grading on a curve. The 1959 version, I wind up coming in, even though I'm predisposed to loving Hammer films, at 2.5 stars, because I think it still suffers from some substantial structural issues. I think that Christopher Lee plays an unlikable character, which is a problem. I think that there are still some odd cuts to the story. Like, Holmes might have been missing for a substantial portion of 1939, but there are certain leaps in 1959 where when Holmes, comes out of the cave, he's like, "Oh yeah, I found that out by talking to that guy." What guy? Who did you talk to? That sort of thing. It's like, oh, that all happened off screen while we were distracting you with this stuff. All right, well, I feel a little cheated then, but fine. And I think that I am likely to revisit the 1959 version just because I love Christopher Lee so much. But it's a 2.5 stars. So Hound of the Baskervilles, we got a little bit of a little bit of a stumble here to the start of our Sherlock Holmes marathon.
Darren, give it to me.
We've said it all. I give 39 a 1. It's a 1. I can't really give it enough for what it started. I get your point, John. Like, and that is definitely grading on a curve. The curve's not quite there for me. And I will say though, while I won't watch this one again, I will look up, because I'm sure someone's ranked all of the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes and said, which is the best? And I'll watch that one, because I do want to see him again in the one that everyone says is his best. And if they say it's Hound of the Baskervilles, then I'm just not going to do it because they're wrong. I highly doubt it's this one, but you never know. And then as far as 59, I'm going to give it a 3. I really enjoyed this movie. I think my curve is the fact that I had watched 39, so I did already kind of know the story. So my mind is already kind of filling in some of the gaps that there are, structure story-wise. Like, it helps the fact that it's like I just read the book before the movie. And so it's easier to fill in. But I really enjoyed Christopher Lee. I always love seeing him in roles. And Peter Cushing was amazing. I don't think he did another Holmes. I wish he did, because that would be great to see as well. So that was my ratings. You may file when ready, Tristan.
I like you talked about, there's nothing more that I can add to the conversation. I gave 39 a 1.5, so I'm kind of splitting the difference between the two of you. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. We just have different rating, like we just have different scales. And for 59, I give it a 2. I'm never going to watch either of these ever again. There are things that I liked more in 59, but not enough to make me think it was a good movie. So yeah, 1.5 and 2. And John, like you said, this is not a great start to to our wing of Sherlock, but it can only get better from here, right? Right?
So long as we skip Sherlock Holmes and the Deadly Necklace, there's not going to be any backsliding. I can promise you that.
So John, he was the Good Samaritan, and he watched the movie before the rest of us and told us, please,
fell on
let's
his
not.
sword is the proper proper term.
As soon as it ended, I sent a note and I said, not this one. We can take this one out. No, there's nothing worthwhile.
I think there was really only one or two other times in the history of this podcast where one of us either watched it all or started watching it, and we're like, we can't talk about this movie.
Oh yeah. Oh God. There was one. Oprah Winfrey was involved.
It was Beloved, wasn't it?
Beloved. That's the one.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like almost all of us, we got like 5 or 10 minutes in, and we were like, oh, this doesn't feel good.
Like we cannot. I was
Life's
like, I
too
want to
short.
keep watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Darren, what are we doing next week now that we know what we're not doing next week?
Well, we've covered 1939, 1959. We're going to jump another span of time into the 70s with the 7% Solution from 1976. Our next visit, the wing of Sherlock Holmes here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.